I want to talk about being called of God. I started preaching at a very young age. I was 12 years old when I started, but between age 5 and 12, I wrestled with that call because I knew young that God wanted to use me, but I didn't really know how to solidify and verify if I was indeed called by God. And I would ask other men of God, seasoned men of God, old men of God, how do you know? And none of them could give me an answer. They would just say, oh, you'll know, which I found very unhelpful. But there may be somebody listening to me now and you say, I feel called of God, but I'm not sure. How can I know? Well, there are many ways to know, but I'll give you just one right now. I'll give you two scriptures to show you what I mean. In John 6:44, I want to start there. John chapter 6, the 44th verse. Jesus is talking and he says, no man can come to me except the Father which had sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day. Jesus says, no man can come unto me unless the Father draws him to me. I want you to know that God is the one who will draw you to your calling. He will draw you to serve Jesus. The calling of God is the drawing of God. And you can be drawn and not realize it. To be drawn is to be attracted to be gravitated toward. To be gravitated toward the things of God, to be pulled toward the things of God. When you have a new desire and a new passion for the things of God that's hard to explain, that's part of the calling of God in your life. God is drawing you unto himself, and it is a gift from the Father. Jesus said, no man comes to me except he is drawn, pulled closer by the Father. It is the gift of the Father to be called. And I'll show you an example in the life of some of Jesus' disciples. In John chapter 1, starting at verse 35, the scene that we want to paint is John the Baptist is in the wilderness and he's preaching. And John the Baptist has a group of men with him that are his disciples, his followers. They're the initial followers of the message that John is preaching, and they're following him. They're with him in the waters of baptism. They're helping him to preach the message. They're helping him to baptize. They are his students. They're adherents to his doctrine and his gospel. And this is the setting we find in chapter 1 of John, verse 35. And it says, again, the next day after John stood and two of his disciples. We don't know how many disciples John had in total, but the Bible tells us that John was standing with two of his disciples. Verse 36, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he, John the Baptist, said, behold, the Lamb of God. And the two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. They heard him, and then they followed Jesus. Verse 38, then Jesus turned and saw them following, said unto them, what seek ye? What do you want? They said unto him, Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master, Teacher, where do you live? Where dwellest thou? Verse 39, and he said unto them, come and see. They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. Verse 40, one of the two which heard John spake and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. So we see that among the disciples of Jesus, the first disciples of Jesus were originally disciples of John. But they saw Jesus, they heard Jesus, and something was drawing them to follow after Jesus. And Jesus said, what do you seek? And they said, we want to know where you are, where you live. And he says, come and see. And they remained with him. And they became his apostles, they became his disciples. If you feel called or drawn to get closer to Jesus, to know how Jesus thinks, to know how Jesus lives, to know how Jesus is, if you feel drawn, that's a good indicator that you have been given a grace from the Father and you are called. Do you feel the draw? Do you sense the draw of God? Are you curious to know more about Jesus, to learn at his feet, to follow his way, to learn his word? You very well may be being called to be a modern day disciple of Jesus. God bless you.